And so I just want you to see him. He is the outcast in our society. You know why he's an outcast in our society? It's a very interesting thing. Those who think that there is no epistemological warfare, meaning the war on knowledge in our country, you are fooling yourself. There is. He's one of the example of a person who came with the most radical ideas that tried to transform, not even try to transform our economy, try to destroy what has been created during colonialism and apartheid, and try to come with a paradigm, or trying to come with an environment that will make all of us to be on the equal footing, that will make all of us enjoy the natural God endowments that he gave to the South Africans. But the system, you can go and read, ridiculed him. Go and see, they were saying he's one of the most, his economic thinking are crazy. I don't want to say it. He's like a lunatic person. Don't listen to him, And then he was marshalled out from the Department of Finance. Yeah. And today, here he is, as a testimony to say, if you touch the powers that be, you are going to be arrested, you are going to go hungry, and you are going to go crazy, and you will be ostracized in the society. But if he was continuing with the neoliberal policies, surely you will be beyond being a professor. You'll be serving in the World Bank and the IMF. And so there are black people in our society who say, look, I will commit a class suicide for the sake of my people. He's one of them. He's not different from Ubabu Makwaza. Ubabu Makwaza, as you see him there, let me tell you something, because I get proud, as well as Ubabu Mkize, Dr. Umkize. I get proud when I'm in a room and I'm around these people. These are the people who always say, no matter what, I'll never compromise truth. No matter what, I'll never sell my soul for 10 rand. I'll never sell my soul for my child to go to the Michael house. I'll rather go hungry with my children, so that at the end of the day, when I speak with them during dinner table, they will know that they have a father. Of what you said, they have a father whose moral and ethic upright. And so Ubabu Makwaza, surely you saw him being ridiculed, but he stood for truth during the social development inquiry. He could have been bought easily. He could have been a billionaire or a millionaire, but he decided not to be part of that corruption. And so we as society of black people, look, I can't sell my soul, I can't sell my people, I can't sell the future of our children. And so when you sit with them here, we need to be proud. Hence, I'll give it to Professor Ukris. I would say he's one of the people that I admire. He is a professor in economy. One of the few. If you do an audit in South Africa, how many black professors? You will be shocked that there are not even more than 20. Black professors. He is one of them, but the system hated him, rejected him. And so, Prof, time is yours.
Ngibonge babudube ngamagama akho. Kimi mangizwa umuntu ekhuluma kanje ngami ngibe namahloni, kodwa ngiyajabula ngoba yikho lo encourageayo ukuthi siqhubeke sikhuluma iqiniso, noma kunomuntu oyedwa eSouth Africa olibona iqiniso, lokho kwenza ukuthi sijabule. Ngixolise ukuthi sifike late, besingazi ukuthi kwakhiwa imigwaqo, kune traffic, kodwa siyajabula ukuthi siye safika ukuthi si participate kule session. Ngizokhuluma ngesingisi ngoba le session lena ibhekwa izwe lonke, so that i-message ephuma lana bayizwe bonke nabaphesheya bayizwe ukuthi abantu base South Africa bathini ngezwe labo. I-problem esinayo eSouth Africa iye yabekwa kahle ubaba uSikhakhane, uMoses Sikhakhane. He said the main problem in South Africa is that at some point white people oppressed, dispossessed and exploited African people. And that process of oppression, dispossession and exploitation by white people continues to this day unabated. In various ways, if you check the levels of super exploitation of African people, it's very shocking. It has gotten worse. So the more democratic South Africa became, the more the conditions for further exploitation of African people were facilitated. There's one thing, and this can be debated maybe in the next session, that all over the world, why is it that people of African descent or African people, they find themselves at the bottom of the global capitalist system? Why is it that the case? Why is it that under a modern global capitalist system, there's not a single African country or a country that is dominated by people of African descent is categorized as part of the advanced economies? Why is that the case? And I always say that what is unique about African people, I've studied, I checked, but perhaps I am wrong, but African people are the only people in the world who entered the current modern capitalist system as slaves. No other grouping entered the capitalist system ever since its dawn as slaves. Indians did not, the Chinese in the East did not, white people did not, but only African people entered as slaves. So, with the rise of capitalism, we know that ideas changed in Europe. They moved towards being liberals, talking about freedom, fraternity, and liberty. But not for Africans, because under those conditions, African people were slaves. That is what is unique. And the task is now upon us to break that historical relationship between African people and the global capitalist system. We need to debate whether it is possible that we can attain our total liberation within the framework of the capitalist system if we entered this system as slaves. So it's a debate that we need to have, and in a way of crafting a vision. But Ubaba Sikhakhane said, what the distance between what we want to achieve, our liberation, total liberation, and our situation today, that distance is determined by our level of disunity. We are not united. And by implication, we are saying that if we can get united, we can shorten this distance between our current condition and where we want to be. Now, African people in South Africa in particular, there's a certain degree of organization. Trade unions. We'd recall that we had trade unions, for example, at some point I was in COSATU. COSATU had under it more than 2.2 million African, largely African workers, 2.2 million under COSATU Federation. And on the other hand, you had the ANC, which had more than 1 million members. And we know that once people join political organizations, it means that their level of political consciousness is higher. So we have 1 million, at least 1 million people who were ANC members, and we had more other people who were members of other political parties, like the EFF, like the Pan-Africanist Congress, AZAPO, UDM, you mentioned them. So I can safely say more than 2 million African people are politically conscious. They join political organizations. I won't mention those who joined the DA. I'm mentioning those that I consider to be closer to the national liberation tradition. Then we have students. We've got various student organizations. We saw with Fees Must Fall how students were organized, the levels of consciousness. And we've got youth organizations. So there is some level of organization among African people. But what is a problem is that just as when we get organized, we get wrong leaders. Because they take these mass organizations with masses of people and then they mislead them. So over and above the problem of organization, we've got the problem of leadership. We've got a crisis of leadership. And this crisis of leadership, you see it today. You've got two organizations in parliament that are claiming to be coming from the national liberation tradition, the EFF and the ANC. Together, they make up more than 2/3. They can change the constitution. But it's not happening. When you go to the ANC, you will hear talk of revolution, national democratic revolution, liberation of black people in general, Africans in particular. You go to the EFF, same thing. Liberation of black people in general, African people, economic freedom in our lifetime. But here they are, 2/3 majority. They're doing nothing. There's a crisis of leadership. I'm going to take it a step further. The two organizations take resolutions that are similar. Land expropriation without compensation. 2/3 majority, right? It's supposed to be implemented. It's a straightforward issue. What's the problem? It's the problem of leadership. The masses of members of the ANC have resolved. You see, that's the phenomenon. The masses in a mass organization agree that we need land expropriation without compensation. They elect leaders. And then leaders come back to them and ask, do you want the land? You see. And then when you say, yeah, we want the land, they're still consulting. They're still consulting in communities. Do you want the land? Tell us why. To what extent? Do you want the land? And then realizing that the masses of the people outside the structures of the ANC and the EFF, just ordinary people, they want the land. They want land expropriation without compensation. Then they start saying, no, it's going to disturb food security. So it must happen under certain conditions. So which means that the struggle was fought on condition that food security is not going to be disturbed. So, Abo King Dingane, Cetshwayo, Chief Bambata, Skukune, Hinta, Bonke. It means they were fighting for this land on condition that there should not be food security that is threatened. But we thought that the bringing back of the land to African people is non-negotiable. It's not conditional. It's a demand that is not conditional. So on condition that angeke usilambise. So if sibona ngazathi yazodisturb amabhunu uma belima angeke uthole umhlaba. Hlala unjalo. So we want the land. No, there's going to be food insecurity. We want free education. There's no money. You see. You want to nationalize the mine. We want the mines. No, you'll scare investors. What did we fight for? What are these organizations for? It's a crisis of leadership. And when that happens, then we should know that some leaders are bought and others are not. The ones that are bought are going to be bolstered, to be supported by the media. They will be presented as messiahs. Elect this one, there won't be a downgrade. elect this one, you'll see after 2 years, 2-3 years, there'll be 3% growth. Elect this one, there'll be job creation. All those are lies, they've come to pass. So it's a crisis of leadership. We need to be very blunt and be able to isolate false prophets amongst our leaders from those that are not. We need to be honest. So we have a crisis of leadership over and above the crisis of organization. There's something that is happening. There's one comrade la Ote, we need to remove the CODESA grouping, something like that. They recycle themselves. They recycle themselves. And above. Ulandu umuntu retired ukuthi eze because participated in that process to secure the interest. Besingekho lapho. I mean, I was born. I participated in the first democratic election. I don't recall the extent of consultation njengoba yenza ngomhlaba manje. Ukuthi ba-informe abantu ukuthi what are they negotiating eCODESA? What are they agreeing on eCODESA? There was no widespread consultation. We need to be honest. When the constitution was drafted, but here in 1996, date, I don't recall once. I mean, I've been saying student. I don't recall once being engaged with, hey man, there's a constitution that is being drafted. What do you think should be in that constitution? I don't recall. Maybe it happened. Maybe I was not there, but I don't recall widespread consultation of people around the constitution. So, I conclude that this constitution is not ours. Maybe abanye bayazi, but it's not ours. So when they say swear by the constitution, we swear by something that is not ours. So we've got a huge task to dismantle and to fashion a constitution, a alternative. So, in Johannesburg we met, we were shocked. There were more people, in fact we were allowed to see about 50 in a room, but we ended with 75 and others were turned away because of COVID. But the level of interest was very high. In that meeting, we agreed that African people do not have power. Everywhere we are powerless. Everywhere. Even at workplace, in schools. Comrades here were talking about the language, English. It's a sign of power. We are powerless, even amongst ourselves. Asikhona ukukhuluma kahle, ngikhulume ngesiZulu, ngimixe ngeSotho. Why? Ngilinka nabantu abakhuluma isiXhosa, neSotho, nesiVenda, nesishanga nge-English. An English person is creating a link between me and other natives. It's a problem. We don't have power. We don't have economic power. There's not even a single product that African people are producing that white people don't produce. They don't need us. In fact, we are dependent on white people. For food, for clothing, for technology, anything, it's white people. Even companies from abroad, when they say they are investing about iPhone, iPhone, Samsung, all these technologies, they come through white people. Samsung never strikes a deal with an African in South Africa to share the technology and distribute the technology. They go for white people. Even the Russians, as we speak, are trying to learn Afrikaans. Hi, Zulu. Because the Afrikaners are in charge of the economy. That's where the business is. I am a Zulu, I am a Xhosa, I am a Shangan, I am a Venda. So it's important to learn Afrikaans for the Russians, as matter stand, than isiZulu. So we need power. We need power. That's the first thing that we agreed on at JOS. Number two, we said that African people, this is our country. We are not going to be apologetic about it. And in South Africa, as matters stand, we need to realize, as Ubabu Dube was saying, that it's a battlefield. But we pretend like there's no war going on, right? People are hogging on and monopolizing the wealth of our country in our presence as a majority. We are a minority, an economic minority and a numerical majority. Some comrades are talking about a useless majority, right? So we need to change that. But what is it that can unite us? We need to develop a vision that cuts across, regardless of a political party. An overarching vision, African vision for this country. So why is that the case? Because it's our country. The Chinese have their vision. It does not mean that there are no non-Chinese people in China. The Indians have a vision. It does not mean there are no non-Indian people in India. There are people who are not Indians in India. There are people who are not Chinese in China. There are people who are not whites in Britain. But the white people of Britain are determining the agenda of Britain. The black people in Britain, they don't. It's not their country. They were enslaved there. Their position has not changed. Black Lives Matter, right? But they determine the agenda because it's their country. Somehow we are made to feel guilty if we get together and determine the agenda for this country as African people. So this is what is unique about us. We are the indigenous people of this country. We are the majority. But indigenous people in the US are a minority. They were exterminated. We can understand their position, right? They cannot mount a successful fight against the colonial settler white population in the US. About Trump, they are Americans, yeah, but it's not their country. We should not forget that. There are indigenous people there. They've been exterminated, others pushed down to Latin America. So we understand that it will be difficult for them to dismantle white power in America because they are a numerical minority. Same thing with Australia. The Aborigines are a numerical minority. What's the excuse here? The only way we can explain it is the issue of leadership and the need to develop a vision that unites African people across political parties. We should not be divided by petty issues. We should understand our principal challenge, and what divides us should be secondary. What we need to emphasize now is what unites us. And we share that experience of being dispossessed, of being oppressed or dominated, and of being exploited. We earn the lowest salaries across all the scales. No matter how educated you can be, you'll be the lowest earning person in your scale as an African in this country. So we share that experience and we need to resolve it through power, access to power, and transforming whatever power relations exist. So we need that vision. So even if I form my own small political party, right? But that party, as a minimum, it must have elements of a vision that must come from this house. Because if my political party, my organization, right, my farmers' organization, my business organization, does not have elements of this vision, it means that it is outside the politics that are in line with the development of African people. We should not be differing over issues of land, issues of empowering African people. Resolutionary Reserve Bank. Both parties agree. The Reserve Bank must be owned by the state. Ayenzeki. Some leaders say, hey, we can't do it, it's too expensive. Can't it we enter the struggle on condition that things are expensive or not? We can't take the land, it's too expensive, it's the same thing. So, if vision will allow us to be a solid unit, by eliminating what divides us, then we'll be a solid mass. We need to be a solid mass. An Afrikaner or a poor person or an English person, la at Durban, no say, Joes, when they meet you, they are one. They deal with you. We need to be a solid mass in order to exert our power. And that can only happen if we set this vision, we have these values that will guide us. The fourth thing that we agreed on is a need for an organization. Konubabo kulumile la watu funeki structure. So it's a task that we need to develop, to form an organization. We need to organize our people, and it cannot be just one structure. Ngoba abantu bakithi baphila ezindaweni ezihlukene. Some are students, some are workers, some are in the township unemployed. So we need to form different types of organizations to collect our people under this one roof of a structure. So this one gets a voice. Steve Biko had about 19 organizations. They were leading about 19 organizations. It was not just one. There were 19 organizations. Even Wayona ANC had different organizations, Abo Kosas, Abo Sasko, Abo Kosatu. So we need to organize our people and give them a structure so that they can have proper representation. So from here, Ngumilana Nobabu to Malapa, Magati, funeka sibe ne program of action. Ubani uzokwenza ini, ukuze le structure sibe alive, nama tasks. That's what we agreed on. So as a result, a goalie, then an interim structure was formed to try and organize another session, longer session. Nguvumelana no kono ubaba lo kufuneka another session, right? Where we are going to flesh out these things, because the views that are coming from KZN and the views that will be coming from Gauteng, the views that will be coming from the Eastern Cape will have to be combined so that we've got a national view, and then we have a national structure. So those are the tasks that are ahead of us. Ngiyathemba ukuthi angizange nginibhore. Yeah, ngiyabonga.
Can I do this, ne? Because we want to be open. Surely now you know what's next. It's a very simple thing. In Gauteng there is a structure that was organized. And one fellow of mine that I've admired most, he said to me, look, Xolani, when you try to build something, eliminate volunteers. Because it means that those people really, they have nothing to do, you know. They just want something, and then they simply lose interest. That's what he said. He said, eliminate volunteers. You know, those people who simply raise and say, no, I'm a volunteer, I would like to be part of this, you know. That's what he said. And two, he said, approach people that you think that they might add quality to this whole thing. And they must be committed. It's not the issue of status. We are not forming a political organization, but it's a movement. Lots of sacrifice. You are sitting here, you know, it's so much sacrifice to people who made these things to happen. And we need those kind of people, because we don't want to fail. That's the most important thing. We don't want to fail, as natives, and 2, we don't want to keep on encouraging you to do something. And so we don't want volunteers. That's the most important thing. Before I go to the most crucial thing, I would like, if there is anyone here who have a question, to pose that question or to ask those questions, so that whatever we do moving forward, you know what you are trying to achieve. Surely, Bob Chris, you have explained to them what you are trying to achieve in a very concise manner. And so, is there anyone here who would like to have a question? Because we are trying to form a native movement that is not politically aligned, that is not aligned to any, what you call trade union, religion, sex and gender, but something that will try to see on an intellectual level, also on the practical level, because those two things you can't divorce, practical and intellectual level. Who's got maybe any idea of, or would like to have clarity? I'll give you that opportunity. Babu Chris is here, I am here, and then we'll answer you. And then can I have those hands? Can I have from people who have not asked anything or have not said a word? Yes, I'll give you the opportunity. Is there anyone? Okay, I'll take only 6, and if there is no any other person, it means that those are the only 3 people. 4 or 5. Chris, can you jot down the? Yes, and don't forget to send me an email. A WhatsApp, native KZ, and then send me your name as well, if you don't mind.
No, thanks, my leader. Thanks. To be very short and straight to the point, the clarity-seeking question is to say, I can hear a facilitator and the previous speaker who have just spoken that in Johannesburg or Gauteng, there was a structure that was nominated or appointed. So to say that this is the same exercise that we need to do here in KZN. So therefore, my clarity-seeking question was that I'm not against that. In fact, I'm for that, because I believe that when you organize, there must be responsible people for particular tasks to do. Is that when we put the structure, how many people are in this structure? What is the guideline or terms of reference or whatever in terms of appointing this particular structure? What is it that will guide us? Thank you.
Okay, thanks for the opportunity. What I wanted to address here or to come up with is that what we talk about, I didn't hear even one solution that we came up with. And we all understand our problems, that our main problems is the economic independence. So what I wanted to get also from the professor is that what can we do then to get us on the equal footing? Because what I think is that we don't have our own industries that we have, and we also need to build our own industries that will also put us on the equal footing. And we have those industries, like, for example, but what we must do is that how can we build and monetize those industries?
Sanbolane, I have a question. If this is going to be a think tank group organization, how can we self-finance ourselves? Because if private companies finance us, can influence us. So what program do we have in mind to self-finance ourselves as a group to be independent?
Umbuzo nawo nje ukuthi uma ngabe ngilele uprof ekhuluma ngibuka sengathi ukuthi our aim is to change the grand neuron of the country, which abantu abaningi sebeventile their views in terms of which how does it oppress abantu abamnyama. My question is it possible really to change those grand neurons which were introduced the aggression? Is it possible to change them or negotiate, or do we really mean business in terms of a revolution which will make impact? Are we prepared to die, and are we prepared to kill for us not to be killed? That's the question.
Unganiso wakahlela emdubatuba. Umbuzo wami ukuthi njengoba kuthiwa ukuthi eqaleni ubhuti sizokhuluma ngama-practical solutions that are implementable. Angayizwa ke i-implementekana namhlanje. Mhlambe bese kukhona yini okupractical esingathi masihlangana ngoJanuary 31 next year sithi sesenze ukuthi sesihambe safika la ngalendlela. Bese ngiphinde ngiba nesicelo sokuthi ngesikhathi ukwenza i-interest structure ngibona abantu besifazane abaningi bephuma imbokodo ke ewumgogodla, futhi ke ngibona abaningi bephuma ukuthi engathi mayenziwa bese befakwa kakhulu, hayi ngoba befakwa kodwa ngoba vele bayimgogodla kwalomhlaba siphila yabo.
Okay, you are the last person then.
And it is a naive question.
But mind why I'm going to ask a naive question?
I just want to ask it for its own clarity and maybe
We are talking about the structure.
yes, the structure as well. The question is, how are you going to convince people who are proud South African and identify with the Constitution? Because you say the Constitution isn't the document of so-called Africans. Because, for instance, Norman Russia here, the trade unionist, stipulates progress that has come from labor legislation since 1979. For instance, Section 22 of the Constitution speaks about the right to fair labor practices. And these trade unions will tell you there's no other grouping in South Africa that has benefited from that section alone in the Constitution, because Africans are not even classified as employees prior 1979. So how are you going to convince South Africans who largely identify themselves with the Constitution, like the rights of LGBTQI communities that are protected? How are you going to convince that section of community to identify with this project you are trying to do here?
That's a very good question. Prof, we have two questions. It's from the gentleman here, as well as from Ubuti. They will ask about, are we prepared to die? Those are the two, I think, important questions for it.
Thanks. I think in terms of the structure, I'm a Bobo from Clermont. I think in terms of the structure, I think questions, as far as the presentation took place, questions are necessary to clarify the nature, the composition, the selection, whatever, as far as the structure is concerned. But in terms of the politics, the economics, the legal technicalities of other things, it's unfair for us to pose questions to Prof. Marikane, to Pola. Because it's us here who are dealing with the politics and the economics and whatever issues that you want to deal with. So I thought it could have been much more fairer if we explain to say questions as far as the structure is concerned. But if we are going to pose questions around the politics and the economics, it simply means the entire process we started with, which we are directing, is going to be counterproductive. I don't know if I'm making myself clear. So as far as the structure is concerned, okay, these are the challenges that we are facing as Africans, we are powerless and all those things that we spoke about. Now we want the structure. Questions emanating from the presentation about the structure are important. And then the next session, which I think all of us unanimously agree with, that we need to have a session of this nature. Because I'm avoiding a situation where we talk about the structure and also we enter into a realm of political economy. You get a point? So we must have a single-minded sense of purpose. The purpose is about the structure. Do we need the structure? Yes, we need the structure. That question is answered as a result of our conditions. How is the structure going to be composed? That's what we need to deal with. Then the rest of other things, because it will even be counterproductive for Prof to come and provide and present himself or you, Xolani, as a messiah, as a provider of all solutions. Solutions are here, we discussed here. The politics and the economics. So Prof, Xolani, don't be tempted to enter into the politics and economics. It's what we discussed here. Let's stick so that we close it off properly in terms of the structure and how we take it forward. And the issue raised by Budwamela and by agenda, because we normally take it for granted.
Yes. I think there is no more debate. Let's do a very simple thing. Is there anyone? I'm not looking for a volunteer. I'm looking for someone who's passionate, who would like to be part of this. And we don't want a lot of people. Only, let me say, only 5. As we do the closing, there are people that who owe me some money. They must stay behind because they promised that they would make a contribution. They must not leave. They know themselves. Can we have, I've communicated with them, can we have 5 people from this house who are interested to be part of this? And may they stay behind. And we are not going to be full of nonsense and jokes and so forth. I have to be honest, because we are building something. We are not comedians. We are very serious. We don't want us to, when we go to Johannesburg or to other provinces, and then we go with comedians. Seriously. We want people who are serious, who are going to be committed, who are going to put their resources so that Steve Biko can be answered, because we don't have sponsor. And so you'll spend your petrol, you'll spend your petrol, you spend your airtime, you spend your time as well. And so can we have 5 people who are prepared to put their money and their time to this project? We don't want volunteers. People who will put their money, their time, their expertise, and who are willing to be called at any time. And so those people who like to do that, can they stand up? We don't want a person, when we say we are going to Johannesburg, he say, hey, I don't have money, can you assist me, guys? Because we don't want to negotiate those things. I'm being honest, we don't have money, all of us, but it's very painful when we are supposed to go somewhere else and then that person becomes your problem. And then it defeats the whole purpose. I'm not sure if you understand me. I'm not trying to be, but I have to be honest. We don't want the person, when he say we are going to Johannesburg on this particular day, and then he say, can I have a lift? And then if we say, I'm flying, and then he say, hey, If you don't have resources, sit down. If you have resources, stand up. That's what is very important. As I'm saying, we are not joking, you know. We don't want people who say, hey, comrade, I don't have money. Hey, I'm waiting for a lift. Hey, I don't have airtime. I can't make a call. If you have challenges, don't volunteer. That's my advice. But if you don't, stand up. And so those are the 4 people that we have. We rather have 4 than 5. Trust me. And so I would like that 4 to stay behind. It's 5 with. I saw 4 people. I saw 4 people. And so we are comfortable, ne? And so you were given an opportunity. Don't say you were not given an opportunity. It was kind of a club, you know. It's an open thing. I've said it. And all of us, we are comfortable with what I've done, ne? Can I have an approval from you?